Do you love quilting with triangles? Are you confident sewing your triangles together? Have you mastered perfect points on your triangles? I want to share with you some of my tips and techniques for getting perfect points on your triangles every time. I'm Louise from Inspired Quilting by Louise, and I am anxious to share this tutorial with you. Half square triangles are a lot of fun, and they create such interest in your quilt. It's an incredibly popular block, and every quilter should know not only how to make a good half square triangle, but how to sew them together so that the points remain intact. And that's what we're going to talk about today. You can see in the quilts behind me there are a few different variations. There's a couple chevron patterns, and then the one in front that we're going to talk about specifically is the Dutchman's puzzle. All of them have points that connect with other blocks that have points. And there's a few steps that you can take that's going to give you perfect points on every quilt that you make. So let's go ahead and get started. I want you to get all these tips, plus there's a printable tutorial down below that you can download as a quick reference. So let's go ahead and get started. I want to show you how to make this quilt. Please subscribe and give me a thumbs up if you like what we're talking about today. Let's get going. I was in a dilemma as to which layout to use for these half square triangles. So I went to my old standby. You can see how yellowed these pages are around the edges. This dates back to the 80s when I first started getting serious with quilting. It's the Quilting and Patchwork Dictionary, and it has a couple hundred different blocks, and what I like doing is seeing what the original block looked like without color on graph paper, and then I can go in and sort of personalize it and do my thing with it. So it's just kind of a fun book to have. The pattern that stood out to me is this one right here. It's the Dutchman puzzle, and it's a pair of flying geese going in each direction. So let me just set this aside. I just wanted to show you that because it's a fun book that I enjoy referring to. But by pairing each half square triangle together, we will get the flying geese pattern. And this Dutchman's puzzle has two going in each direction. And I like that a lot, and that's what I do want to use this pattern. What I'm not sure of is whether I want to keep it like this, where the flying geese are all the same color, or if I maybe want to mix them up. This might be a bit much. I'm not really sure. I'm just going to try and get this turned around, and let's see, that goes that way. Let's move this one. These go this way. That's too close. Kind of do this. So do I have them all? I think I've mixed them all up. Let's try and get them going in the right direction. Oh, these are supposed to be up, not sideways. So that's up, that's out. There we go. So I don't know if I like this. I don't think I do, because it's just, you don't see the pattern, you don't see the flying geese stand out. Maybe if they were more monochromatic, or I'm not sure, but I think what I may do is create the flying geese in the same fabric. It seems to me, where's some fabric here, that I like that one better. So I think that's what I'm going to do. So I'll go with this style, keep these in the same colors, the same fabrics, and go from there. Now I do not have 8 different fabrics, so there will be some that will double up, but like these, there are some that the fabric was more orangey and some purple, so that can kind of make a difference. And then I have a few of these solid sort of watercolors that I can put in there as well, and that will kind of help offset it all. So this is going to be a really big block. We've got 4 by 4, which these are 4.5, so they'll finish at 4 inches, so that's a 16-inch block. So it's going to be a good size quilt, but because these are larger size, they're going to go together quickly. So what I'm going to do first is sew all my pairs together. So I'm going to take all my fabrics and put them together and sew two. Then once I have those together, then I can put them into an arrangement. I'll pair them up with others, and I'll mix that up so they're not all the same. And I'll pair those up and make this 4-patch. And then once I have that 4-patch, all I have to do is combine 4 of those together, turning them in different directions. So it'll go together pretty quick. So first we do pairs, then we create the 4-patch, and then we put 4 patches together. And we'll have a quilt. So that's where we're going to go. Now what I want to focus on in this video is sewing this seam here so that we're going to get nice clean points below the seam line, and sewing this seam, because that's going to be really important in order to get the right look of our flying geese, because we want these points to be exposed and not buried inside the seam. Now we're also going to have these coming together in a corner right here, and that can be a little bit fussy, but we'll work through that, and I want to show you how I do that, and what techniques, and again, it's so much about the seam allowance and keeping it pressed, and just those few little techniques that you put together that make it work really well. So let me get started. I'm going to sew some together because we'll blow through that real fast, and then we'll get into some of the other aspects of how to put this together to get really good points. And we'll be there. This is going to come along really nice. I'm liking the look of it. The first step in making this block is to create our flying geese. And we're going to take 2 half-square triangles with the right sides together in this manner, and we're going to sew a generous 1/4-inch seam down this side. And you can see right here, I'm holding it up as close as I can, where that crosses, that's the point of the top of our flying geese pattern. And we want that to be just below the 1/4 inch where we're going to sew our next seam. Now when we open this, we're going to have a larger triangle. And you'll see right here, this is the seam that we're talking about. It should be a 1/4 inch from the point to the edge. And then as we sew across here, we're going to sew right across the top. And when the next block opens, we're going to see that beautiful point. So let me show you here. Here's an example. It's all done in white thread. Let me see. Here we go. This is one that's easier to see. And so we did our seam across here. Now this is where we take the scant seam. We're taking a seam that's just under 1/4 inch because that allows us the extra space for our seam allowance. Let me draw on this with a pencil. I want to show you where that seam is. So if you look right here, this is where our flying geese 2-patch was made with a seam down the middle. And when we created this seam, we made this point right there. And this is the seam that is putting both blocks together, and it is right above that point. So when we open this, we've got the point of our flying geese directly underneath the previous one, and we don't have a blunt nose there. We've got a nice point. And then once this is all pressed, it's going to lay nice and flat, and we're good to go. Now this particular pattern, the Dutchman's puzzle, what makes it so simple is this is all we make right here. We make 2 of these, we put them together, and this is our block. The entire quilt is made with this block. What changes is the alignment of this particular block. So we're going to have multiple. So here's another one, same thing. So you can see in the middle where that point lies. And we're going to put these together. And the way this works is this goes up, the points go up, and these go the other direction. So if you're going north, then this goes west. And notice that we're going to also have these seams right here. See where that point is? When we sew this, this does not have a point. So that's going to make this side easy. Therefore, I would sew on this side because I can see exactly where that point is going to be. And we want to stitch right above that point so that we don't lose it. So what we would do is line this up with the seam underneath so that those seams line up really well. And we may have to make some adjustments along the way. And that's the thing with half square triangles and putting them together. You just never quite know which way the seams are always going to go. And when you're piecing them, sometimes you have to be a little flexible. That's why a lot of times what I'll do is I'll set the seam, but not press it one way or the other until I finish the block and I see which way it's going to go. Now I'm going to sew this seam open, and I'm doing that to eliminate too much bulk on one side. So this I'm going to have go upward along the same direction here. This one will go that way. So two things. We are going to align these two seams and just put a pin here, and then you're going to begin sewing at this corner. So with a pin here, you're going to come up to this corner. Now look at this. We've got two triangles coming together. So what we want to do is slide that just the littlest bit so that they nest up really nice and close. See how well that fits in there? So we're going to put a pin in here, the seam allowance going in opposite directions, and we're going to take just shy of a 1/4 inch seam allowance beginning here. Then we're going to come down to where this seam has been pinned. We'll sew across here, and then we're going to come down to the end. Now there is a seam underneath, but there's nothing matching it up. So all we have to do is lay this piece over and sew. So we're going to sew these this way, and then we have our block just like this. And here's an example of that. So remember, we start with one of the flying geese patterns, the patch, the 2-patch, put 2 of them together to make a 4-patch, and then those 2 together make this piece. And as you can see, actually I have it upside down. It goes this way because the first geese go up, then these, and I'm going to use north, south, east, and west because left and right doesn't work well on a camera. So if this is north, this goes east, this goes south, and this goes west. So we're going in a circle. And this is the block that you're going to make everything with. It's just a matter of which direction you're going to lay it. But notice that these 2 blocks are the same, but reversed. So if you want to really get a head start and make everything at once, you can do all your 4 patches and then match them up with another one and create this double set. And then all you have to do after that is piece these 2 together and you have your finished block. So it's very simple to assemble. It's not complicated at all. The only fussy part is lining up your seam allowances in order to get your points. But you can see it does go together pretty easily. I do want to show you on this one here where multiple seams, where is it? Right here. Where the multiple points come together. I think you can see that okay. And it can get kind of thick, and I'll show you on the back side because there's a lot of seam allowance coming there. And when you're sewing it, notice how those points, they're not exactly perfect, but doggone it, I'm going to keep that. I'm okay with that. It's maybe a smidge off on one point, but I'm real happy with it. So on the back, you can see I had to do an extra stitching there because I was a bit off on my seam allowance and it didn't line up. But by doing this and spreading these seam allowances in multiple directions, you want to make sure that you're not getting all the bulk on one side, because then your quilt is not going to be very flat on top. You're going to have a lumpy surface where a lot of these blocks come together. But by pressing them in multiple directions like this, I could have taken both of these seam allowances and pushed them up, but by opening it and sewing it across that way, that helps spread it out. It alleviates too much bulk. And that's just kind of how I work on the seam allowances on that. And I just put them together, run it down, but I do pin them along the seams where they're going to intersect, because those are the important points. If these all line up, everything else is going to look great. And that's what I wanted to show you. So remember in the beginning, the first thing that we did is we took narrow seams when we made our half square triangle. Oh, yep, this is one that we actually marked. And the reason we did that is that gave us a little bit of a larger block to work with, so we'd have more seam allowance flexibility. And then when we sew these two together, we make a nice generous seam, because that drops the point down below the seam line. And then as we sew these together, we're going to take a scant seam. We're going to go just below that point so it doesn't fall into the seam. So there's just a little bit of background space there. And next thing you know, you're going to have a beautiful quilt ready to go. So I really like this pattern. I'm excited about getting it finished. Now, I will tell you that we're partially there. This quilt is not completed. I'm afraid we had a case of COVID in the house this week, and it's been a little bit hectic. So we've got the mini version here today. I got 4 of the patches finished. Actually, that was 5 and 6, but I didn't get it all put together. And this is going to have 9. And in order to do the 9 big patches, which these are 16-inch, which is a great size, and it'll be 3 across and 3 down, which measures, I think it's 48 inches. And it takes a total of 144 5-inch squares. So it went together really well. I love how it's turning out. I like those bright pinks mixed in with the orangey red colors and a bit of purple and just some random green because it happened to be there, and a little bit of blue. So I'm okay with all that. But I really, really like how this looks, just sort of spread out and mixed together, and all those colors floating around. And I love seeing the points. Look at that. Not everyone is perfect, but you know what? If you come close, that goes a long ways. It's when you cut them off. You're better to leave a little space in there than to have it cut off, because when you cut that little end off, that little nub, boy, you can sure see that across the room. And that's where your eye's going to focus. So if you spend a little time on getting it nice and what do I want to say, laid out with a good seam allowance, and figure out how to get your points in place so you're not losing them, you're going to be really happy with your quilt. Now, I do have some templates available, like I did for the last one, on how to do that, make the half square triangle itself. This is how to put your seams together, and the scant seam, the generous seam, how to do that in order to get your points to lay out well. So I'll make a link for that down below, because I think that'll be helpful. I had a lot of folks download the first one, and that seemed to be helpful to a lot of folks. So sometimes just that little visual backup that you can refer to helps reset your mind and recall exactly what comes first, because it can be confusing. There's a lot going on here, especially if you're not used to working with triangles. But don't let triangles scare you away. They're manageable, they can be done, and it just takes practice. It takes a good consistent seam allowance and knowing when to take a generous versus a scant seam, but taking nice straight seams so that everything lays out beautifully. And there we are. So let's go ahead and move on from here. We've got more quilts coming further on. I hope you love this one. I'm so glad you're here to join me. I enjoyed this. And at some point in the future, we'll do like a trunk show, a reveal, where a lot of these different quilts, once they're all finished and quilted, I'll show you the finished product, what they look like. I think that'll be fun. But in the meantime, keep watching. I love having you here. I so enjoy sharing my quilting with you. I do hope you'll subscribe. And if you enjoyed this, please give me a thumbs up. I would love that. I would appreciate it so much. So you all have a wonderful day and keep safe and healthy and keep that COVID at bay. Y'all take care. Thanks for being here.